Hello and welcome to the Dream Architect Life with Bryan Sweet and Brittany Anderson from Sweet Financial Partners. Bryan, how are you today?
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right. I didn't ask Brittany because last time she threw me a curveball and said, what if I answered terrible? So I'm not going to even ask her.
Well, I'm just going to tell you I am wonderful.
Okay. Well, Bryan tells me you're wonderful all the time. So, I mean, I believe it. I'm excited about today's podcast. We are doing something a little bit different. We just got off of a great 2-part series about the who's. So please, listener, go back and listen to that. It was fantastic. Brilliant ideas coming from these two. And I just sprinkle a little stuff in there, but the brilliant stuff comes from them. What are we talking about today, though? That's what I want to know.
Yes, we have a really, I think, interesting pivot talking about navigating certainties and uncertainties. So,
Okay.
as you mentioned, Eric, we just came off of, a couple different episodes where we talked about putting the right who's in your life, aligning the people that can essentially help you focus solely on the things that you love, that you enjoy, that gives you energy. We talked quite a bit about, who do you look for as your ideal wealth advisor? Some of the characteristics that we typically work best with when we're talking to prospective clients, but those were all nuggets that you could take away for yourself as you're really navigating kind of this next chapter and this transition. So, one of the things that we hear often and that we've experienced with people is that they don't know what they don't know. We don't know what we don't know. So when it comes to asking the right questions around, what does this next kind of chapter of my life look like? Or what does retirement look like for me? So again, we talked in the last couple about how we get hung up on the what questions. And a lot of times those what's stem from uncertainties. So anytime you are looking at making decisions for your life, there's a really great exercise. It comes from, of course, Dan Sullivan, the creator strategic coach. This whole concept comes from their program, and it's certainties and uncertainties. And how do you navigate that? How do you make decisions that are going to actually help you get momentum for your life versus being stuck in an uncertainty? So when you look at this particular thought process, it's a great way to get started on it is to lay out what are the things that you're uncertain about. So let's just take retirement. Sitting down, grabbing a piece of paper and literally just writing down what are all the things that have question marks behind them. What are the things that you may just not be sure of how you're going to accomplish it, how you're going to get to it. Maybe it's around who you're going to spend your time with. Maybe you've spent all your years with the people that you work with, and now you're kind of stepping out and you got to find new people. So all of those uncertainties. Then at the same time, write down the things that you are certain about, the things that you really do feel confident with. And, the nice thing about that is it puts a framing to mind that it's okay that you don't have all the answers because you do have some of them. So going through and writing those certainties down really helps you get your mindset in the right place. And then anything that you are still uncertain about, you start backing into the who's. So you start putting behind those uncertainties instead of saying, how am I going to get this done? What am I going to do? It's, well, who can actually help me get clarity here? Who can help me turn these uncertainties to certainties? So Bryan, is there anything there that you want to touch on? I know we've navigated and gone through this tool multiple times internally, but for personal and professional reasons.
Yeah, what I have found with that exercise is when you spend the time just jotting those things down, a couple things become clear. One, you probably know more about the situation than you thought. So you've got more certainties than you might have realized to begin with. And the second thing is the uncertainties are where the who, if you will, is going to be so important. And that's kind of where we help become a resource for our clients when we do the deep dive and learn more about you and what your uncertainties are. Ideally, we'll be the who for a lot of those things, but in a lot of cases, we're not going to be, but we can say, well, we're not the experts there, but this individual is. And so I think once there are people out there that can help you, it adds a lot less stress to your decision-making process because it makes it very simple in that I just have to, work with these people or contact these people and then let them do their magic and the rest is taken care of. And otherwise, if you're like most people or, years past before we started implementing these kind of things, it's pretty easy to spin your wheels for a while. And then you get frustrated and you feel like, gee, I'm never making any traction. So this process really eliminates, or at least greatly reduces, the amount of time that's spent in the, spinning your wheels phase.
When I'm hearing you say this, Brittany, the examples that you gave, they almost sound like internal uncertainty to me. When you're talking about, I'm uncertain about, the group of friends that I'm going to have. I'm uncertain about, how I'm going to be spending my time. I'm uncertain about a lot of these pieces. And Bryan, it almost sounds like you're starting to bridge the gap, but I almost answering my question, but I still have to ask it. What about the external, or what I would consider external uncertainties? Inflation right now is a huge topic, right? So that's an uncertain thing for somebody in retirement. And I don't know what inflation is going to look like in 10 years. I don't know what, the stock market's going to be in 10 years. Those external, uncertainties, is that what you're talking about when you're talking about kind of going back and relying on your who's?
Well, I would tell you it's actually both.
Okay.
We're going to deal with both internal and external, but they're going to be the ones that you're concerned about, because not everybody is concerned about the same things.
True.
And the situation that we need to deal with is, where are you? What worries you today? And if this was taken care of or eliminated, would that help you move forward in your decision making or making your retirement better? And then that's what we'll focus on. So I would tell you, it's virtually every time it's both internal and external, but we like to tailor make it to each individual client's circumstances.
Yeah. And I would add to that too, because I think, Eric, you bring up a great point. That's, we can't ignore what's going on in the world. There's been a heck of a lot of uncertainty in the last few years, coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and now kind of what's going on in the economy and all of that. But here's the thing that we are consistently having conversations around, both internally as a team and with our clients. And honestly, I know a lot of us in our personal lives too, is those external factors. It is okay to have uncertainties around those. I think just about everybody does have some question mark in their head with some of the things going on. But where you have to shift is understanding that a lot of that is outside of your control. So instead of becoming fixated on those uncertainties, it is more important to look at, okay, well, that's here and it's happening and I can't change it, personally, just me alone, but what can I do? And that goes back to really the who concept. And that's why this whole uncertainty and certainty topic is so important, is that, that's why you hire financial advisors. That's why you hire a wealth advisor, so that they can stay in tune with what's going on in the world. And you don't have to have your, let's just say, news station on running 24/7. I know we've talked about that before, but how much of a time suck that can be, and how much of an energy zap that can be, because you turn on any sort of news station, news article, even social feeds today, and it is like doom, gloom, boom of the world. The world's ending tomorrow and you'll be lucky if you make it out then. Right. So I just think that if people would spend more time addressing some of those internal uncertainties, because a lot of times that's where you can, kind of change course. And the nice thing too, is with the external ones you mentioned, there's tools and resources that we can use, or that advisors in general can use, to say, okay, well, if this scenario happens, if this is a concern for you, if this happens, here's a worst case scenario, and here's what that might look like for you, and how it might impact you. And what we find is a lot of times, when we bring the reality to the forefront, is people realize, okay, that's probably not where I should be spending my time and my energy. So again, that external versus internal we can control, external we can't. Make sure you have professionals paying attention to the external, so you can focus on working on the internal.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right.
Awesome. I want to pivot this a little bit too, because I think that there's this underlying theme here. When you're thinking about uncertainties, and I've used the word a couple times, fixation, where people get fixated on some of the negative. And I think part of the reason for that is exactly why the media is great at what they do, is because fear catches attention. You're scrolling through an article and you're like, oh yeah, there's a nice warm fuzzy, 3 things you can do to be a better parent, or 4 things you can do to set up your finances or whatever. And then it's like 6 things you need to avoid so you don't have a horrible life. And the click rate is like, oh my goodness, I got to read that. I don't want a horrible life. So, I think one thing that helps people in general to navigate uncertainties with grace is by focusing on gratitude. And, we're not talking about the high level woo-woo type stuff here. We're talking about really looking at, here's where I'm at in life, and here's the things that I am eternally grateful for. It's hard to spiral down into the negative mindset of the uncontrollables and the uncertainties when you are putting gratitude at the forefront every single time. And I'll use this as an example too. Like I've talked before, for me, I'm a constant doer, yes person. I have that high achievement drive. So, for me, I'm constantly looking at the what's next. And my husband gives me a hard time about it. We work on some aspect of our house and he's not even done with that project. I'm like, okay, well, we need to talk about this bathroom over here real quick. And he's like, why? So, I think gratitude, it also forces you into the present moment. And it allows you to say, my gosh, yeah, there's a lot that I want to accomplish and there's a lot that I want to do. And, the future is exciting and it's great. And there's so much possibility there. But as things sit right now, things are pretty darn good. You've got love around you, you've got people around you, you've got, a sense of community, life is good. So I think that's a great framing anytime you're looking at this exercise. Don't get stuck in the uncertainties.
Yeah, I would 150% agree. I think the additional comments I would make is that if you just focus on the things that you can control, maybe that inner part, and you have like a dream focused mindset or thinking about the future and what you would like life to become, I can tell you with certainty that those individuals that we work with that did those 2 things were really unaffected by COVID or just any of the things that are going on in the environment today. It doesn't really bother them because they're looking at their bigger future, and it kind of goes back to gratitude because they're going to some place that they desire, and that's what they're working towards. So they're not looking at the negative things. And when you said that, it made me think of that's so interesting. You would get that result just by kind of what you focus on.
Yeah. And I want to bring this into your home. All right. We're going to get personal here for a minute. So, one of the aspects of the dream architect process as a whole here at Sweet Financial. So we have this great tool. It's called the over dinner conversation. And, one thing that I think should be happening more, and especially when you're looking at any massive transition. So, we could be talking here about retirement. You could be talking about, even just a job change, maybe the sale of a business, empty nest. Maybe there's been a sudden inheritance, a parent has passed away, and you've just got any time in your life that you're faced with massive decisions. So I think sitting down, with your significant other, if you are in a relationship or with a really close friend, and just being able to have those conversations of, what are you uncertain about right now? What is at the forefront of your mind? Because a lot of times, if you can vet that out, even before you come and talk to your wealth advisor, or before you engage with some of these who's, being able to really kind of speak out loud to some of these things that are on your mind, it can help you get clarity when it comes to making a decision. So instead of the old talk at the dinner table, it's like, how was your day? Oh, it's pretty good. How was yours? That's good. And then you're just eating and you're like talking about the kids or whatever, really having something that's more meaningful in those deeper conversations that, again, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be some emotional pivotal conversation moment, but just being able to really talk about like, hey, here's what's on my mind.